Welcome to the Care Chronicles with a Caring Touch, where compassion meets wisdom in every episode, dedicated to our beloved seniors and caregivers. Join us as we explore the heartwarming stories, experts' insights, and practical advice that make every moment with our elderly truly special. Get ready for insightful conversations, practical tips, and heartfelt moments that warm the heart and nourish the soul. Because here at A Caring Touch, we believe in laughter, learning, and love as essential ingredients to aging gracefully. So tune in, relax, let A Caring Touch be your guide to making every moment count. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Care Chronicles with A Caring Touch. I'm your host Avishka, and today I want to talk about making mealtimes meaningful. Have you ever sat across the table from someone you love and realized that they're not eating anymore, or they've lost interest in their food, or maybe forgotten how to eat, or maybe they're just staring at their plate, feeling disconnected from the moment or what's going on? So, for families caring for a loved one with diseases like dementia, mealtime can be one of the most emotional parts of the day. So, let's touch on what dementia is. According to the National Institute of Aging, dementia is the loss of cognitive functioning. So, that includes thinking, remembering, and reasoning. So severe, it disrupts daily life activities. It's a progressive condition, meaning your approach to mealtime will need to change as the disease progresses. And there are many types of dementia. So, activated insights notes Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and other dementias related to diseases like Parkinson's, Pick disease, or Huntington's. Each of these can affect eating differently, and each of these meal times need to be approached differently as well. So let's see how dementia can affect your eating. So this disease can affect the eating by, creating appetite changes, creating sensory changes, memory decline. Medication side effects can also play into this. There could be physical limitations associated and emotional impacts that are affecting this mealtime. And also, reduced activity can also lead to having a lower appetite. So, let's talk about appetite changes. So, this could be a loss of interest in food or forgetting how to eat. Sensory changes can be, a decline in taste and smell, which makes food less appealing, less appetizing, and honestly not enjoyable anymore. Memory decline could mean that your loved one or your client doesn't remember how to use a utensil, or doesn't remember certain food as their favorite, or doesn't remember that they served it for themselves, or that they ordered it for themselves. So these are some of the examples that you might see. Medication side effects, like certain medications that cause nausea or digestive changes, can also lead to a reduced appetite. Physical limitations, so chewing and swallowing difficulties, can play a part into it, and also things like ill-fitted dentures. In terms of emotional impacts, you can think about, things like anxiety or depression or confusion and frustration playing into this important meal time that they're having. And like I mentioned earlier, reduced activity again, lower appetite due to inactivity can also be seen. So some of the challenges that you face at the table itself, again, is not recognizing familiar foods or favorite foods, being distracted or agitated by the environment that they're having their meal in, and certain things like unsafe eating habits. Some clients or loved ones might eat too quickly or pocket food in their cheeks. So this can increase the risk of choking or aspiration. And also other challenges like loss of independence or dignity with, making these choices, making these meals for themselves. So these are some challenges that are common and can be seen. So let's talk about some solutions. So unless there's a need for a specific medical necessary diet that the doctor or general practitioner for that client or loved one suggest, Try to serve them their favorite foods that bring them comfort and joy, but make sure that these are wholesome calories, that they're not empty calories, because the food powers your brain, it powers your body, and you want to make sure that the food that they're eating is nourishing and has nutrients that they can absorb to help them, partake in their daily activities and greatly improve their willingness to eat. Understand a person's favorite foods, cater it to them and understand, when they like to eat, what meal times that they have, what is preferred, and also establish a routine based on this. So let's start with some strategies in terms of meals. Instead of giving them three large meals a day that they're not going to finish, try doing 5 to 6 small meals a day. So this can be associated with or accompanied with nutrient-dense snacks as well. So, nutrient-dense snacks would be things like cheese cubes or some cut up fruit, maybe yogurt. Nuts can also be a good nutrient-dense snack. Just be very careful with nuts since they are somewhat drying. You want to make sure that, it doesn't lead to any other risks like choking or aspiration, and be mindful of what kind of foods you're serving. So with foods like sticky foods or hard foods, make sure, you're being mindful that you provide hydration along with it. With hard foods or dry foods, you can also find ways to moisturize and soften it versus giving it as it is. And things like round fruits like cherry tomatoes or grapes, make sure you cut them up into small sizes so, it reduces the risk of choking. Other things you can use are, using colorful, high contrast plates and vibrant produce so that, the meal time's more visually appealing as well, because that is part of your senses play into your meal. So it's not just your taste buds, it's your smell, your sight, what you see. Sometimes even like certain foods being made might make you more interested and excited for it. So colorful fruits and vegetables, those make plate appetizing and the meal appetizing as well. Vibrant colors to distinguish between what's food and what's cutlery, that's very important as well. And when you're enhancing flavors of these foods, try to use herbs that are natural. Try to use some spices that are okay for that individual to have, and also maybe citrus to enhance the food's natural flavor instead of adding excessive amounts of salt or sugar. And be mindful and make sure you taste it before versus having it on the table, because someone who might have sensory changes, they might not taste the salt as well and might add excessive salt, which is again not good for their diet. Make sure that you're encouraging your client or your loved one to hydrate themselves throughout the day. So, not just right before a meal, not just at the beginning of the day, not just at the end of the day. Make sure that they're hydrating themselves throughout the day and drinking glasses of water throughout the day. You can also encourage them to have hydrating meals like soups. You can encourage them to have smoothies and hydrating foods like watermelon in addition to the water that they're drinking. Other things you can do in terms of supporting the environment and their emotional well-being. So make sure that the food that you're preparing is safely handled and that it's clean. Wash your hands, use gloves, use clean gloves when you're handling these produce. Don't ever mix raw meat with fresh produce. If you're cutting up some fresh produce, make sure you do it separately. And if you're cutting up fresh meat, do it on another platter. Don't do it on the same platter. Don't do it right after each other. This can lead to, diseases and pathogens being present, and we don't want that. So, other things you can do in terms of creating an environment that's supportive and safe, you could create calm mealtime settings, so soft music, soothing environment where, it's peaceful and relaxing for them to come eat in. Avoid having the TV on. The less distractions you have, the more focus that they can have and you can have towards enjoying that meal and really focusing on the food that's in front of you. Serve meals at consistent times, so don't introduce like a new schedule, new time. Learn what times they like to eat and serve those meals at those times and maintain a routine. Encourage independence. So if a participant is able to prepare their own food or prepare parts of that food, encourage them to come help out in the kitchen. Encourage them to maybe put things like butter on toast, or encourage them to do what they can to help prepare that food so they can still gain and retain that independence. When deciding on what food to have for that night or for that day, give them choices. Don't overwhelm them with too many, but, give them choices as to what they can have so they can choose and have some say in what they're enjoying that day. Other things you can do is, instead of having a cluttered table with, multiple forks, multiple spoons, multiple knives, that creates clutter and can create confusion. So we want to reduce that. So have just the utensil that they need to use, that they need to eat with, so that, there's less confusion at the table. And another thing you can do is presenting one food at a time. So instead of having all the food laid out on that space, one thing you can think of is having the next course in the background and serving them one course at a time. And this will encourage them to focus on the food that's in front of them and slowly finish one and then move on to the next. And make dining a social experience. Dine with family and dine with, if you're a caregiver caring for a client, make sure you're dining with your client so that they understand, you know, eating time is exciting. Eating time is a time that they get to spend with other people and socialize and have conversations and connect. At the end of the day, that's what everyone's looking for that connection, no matter what your age, no matter where you're at in your life. So make this mealtime very special for them in that way. However, while it is a social experience, ensure that they're eating and focus on the food. So multitasking can be difficult. If you're having a conversation, make sure they've finished eating before, they're speaking. So that could avoid choking and lead to those difficulties. So there's other options you can have in terms of adaptive tools. So I know we talked about, using bright colored veggies to enhance the plate and make it look more appealing. You could also, in turn, use bright plates to stimulate the appetite, like red plates. And this will also help distinguish what's the food versus what, the cutlery is. You can also have large handled utensils, ones that might have a grip, so it's easier to hold and use. And use slope plates instead of flatware, so they don't have to move the plate around in terms of having to scoop the food or having to get to it. And for cups, you could use things like cups that have the nose cut out, so they don't have to tilt their head too far back. They can just drink forward like that. And another thing you can do is encourage things like finger food. So you can do like roll ups that are small that they can pick and eat from, or cut sandwiches into small bites so that they can eat those as well as finger foods instead of having to use the utensils. There are times where you might also need to rotate the plate. So, say your loved one's done with the meal, they have a full plate of food and they are done with the portion of the food that's right in front of them. Encouraging them to eat their food by rotating the plate can also help them focus on what's right in front of them. So that'll help them focus on the food and make sure that they're nourishing their body that way. So we touched a little bit about safety in terms of, encouraging small bites and slow chewing. Other things you can do is have them obviously sit upright with their feet on the floor, chin slightly tilted or tucked. Chairs with armrests are great with back support, and they can provide great support when they're eating. You could also, in terms of monitoring their food temperatures, make sure that the food is not scalding hot or burning, and make sure those beverages are at a comfortable temperature before serving as well. So things like hot tea, or maybe if they're drinking coffee, make sure that, you regulate that temperature, because with sensory changes, they might not be able to distinguish it as well. You can also, again, we talked about checking for pocketing, so gently check, their mouth after meals to see if there's any food that's being pocketed that could lead to a risk later on. And you can also learn choking prevention techniques to help. You can take classes like CPR classes that also encourage and teach these techniques. Some special considerations. So if you have someone who's visually impaired, you could adjust the lighting. You don't want to have them eat in a dark room. You want to make sure that there's enough lighting for them to be able to distinguish between, what food is what. They want to be able to, understand their depth perception and contrast sensitivity and the ability to recognize objects. So these things decline as the disease progresses. So we want to make sure we're accommodating with appropriate and needed lighting. You could also use contrasting placemats and tableware so, they are aware that, hey, this is the dining space, this is where I'm eating, this is where I'm going to have my meal so that they can distinguish it from other areas of, their day-to-day activities. Another thing to do is to keep portion sizes small to avoid overwhelm again. And other solutions like, taking advantage of meal kit services or food services that already have easy to prepare meals, such as pre-made salads or microwavable meals. Say your loved one still lives by themselves at this time. You can ensure that, if they are unable to prepare their own meals, they have meal services that provide those meals for them. And if the person is still living alone, you can make sure to call them to remind them to eat and offer smaller but more frequent meals, again, calorie rich, and then do not use excessive things like sugar and salt. There are also services like Meals on Wheels available that can deliver to a person's home. So for more information on that, you can look into Meals on Wheels America. So if you're caring for a loved one with dementia or a client with dementia, remember that meals aren't just food. This is a time for them to connect, to feel comfort, and have a sense of dignity. So start with their favorites if you can, create a calm space, and most importantly, make every moment a moment that they can connect and feel loved. So special thanks to the National Institute of Aging, Activated Insights, and the Alzheimer's Association for the research and caregiving guidance that inspired today's episode. If this conversation sparked any ideas for you, if it was helpful, please share it with a caregiver or a family member or someone that might need to hear it. And keep listening as we explore more ways to bring peace and joy to caregiving, as we discuss more about home health and hospice, and leave us a review on Spotify, on YouTube, and Apple. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us on this heartwarming journey with a caring touch. Be sure to check out our website and connect with us on social media for more stories, resources, and ways to get involved. We're excited for you to join us again in our next episode, where we'll continue to explore the beauty of aging with grace and compassion and dive deeper into topics that matter to our elderly community. Until then, stay connected, stay caring, and we'll talk to you again soon on the Care Chronicles with a Caring Touch.